Hello everyone, my name is Gerardo Rosetti and here I'm going to give you my presentation of form input validation. Let's start with it. Here I have the content. I'm going to give you a short introduction and then I'm going to talk about what is form validation, the different types of client-side validation, specifically talking about the built-in form validation and validating forms using JavaScript. And at the end, I'm going to give you a short summary and a conclusion. Introduction. Before submitting data to a server, it is important to ensure all required form controls are filled out in the correct format. Of course, this is called client-side form validation and helps ensure data submitted matches the requirements. Also, it is really important to mention that this is an initial check to improve the good user experience. This is by caching invalid data on the client side so then the user can fix it straight away. For example, if we wait for the information to get to a server and then validate it there, it is going to be a delay that will not be good for the user experience. However, this is just an improvement for the client and should not be considered as an exhaustive security measure, because client-side validation is too easy to bypass, so there must be a server-side validation too. Well, knowing that, we can continue. Now, we are going to talk about what is form validation. Well, here I really can tell you to go to any popular site with a registration form and you will notice that they will provide feedback when you don't enter your data in the format they are expecting. You will get messages like this field is required, please enter a valid email address, your password need to be between 8 and 30 characters long, and well, so on. Well, this is exactly what we call form validations. When you enter data, the browser and or the web service will check to see that the data is in the correct format and within the constraints set by the application. Validation done in the browser is called client-side validation, while validation done in the server is called server-side validation. If information is correctly formatted, the application allows the data to be submitted to a server, and in the other case, the application, the web page, won't send this data to the server. It is going to give you some errors or to tell you what are you missing or what are these things that you write wrong in the form. Now, if we want to make the experience as easy as possible to the user, why do we insist to make this validation in the client side? Well, we got three main reasons. First of all, we want to get the right data in the right format. Our applications won't work properly if our users' data is stored in the wrong format. Second, we want to protect our users' data. Forcing our users to use secure passwords make it easier to protect their account information. And third, we want to protect ourselves. There are many ways that malicious users can misuse unprotected forms to damage the application. So these are three main reasons that we insist to use these form validations. Now, we have the different types of client-side validation. We got the built-in form validation and the JavaScript validation. With the built-in form validation, we use HTML. This validation generally doesn't use JavaScript, and this validation has a better performance than the JavaScript, but it is not as customizable as the JavaScript validation. Now, the JavaScript validation, we use JavaScript, and this validation is completely customizable, but we need to create it or use a library. In the built-in form validation, we have some of the biggest improvement that we don't depend on JavaScript. We use just validation attributes in the form elements, such as required, that specify whether a form field needs to be filled in before the form can be submitted. For example, we got an text input where we save the email from the user, and this form might be submitted. So we establish that is required with the attribute.
We got the min length and max length that specify the minimum or maximum length of textual data as a string, how many characters might have, the minimum and maximum length of characters. Then we have the min and max that specifies the minimum and maximum value in numerical input. After that, we have the type that specifies whether the data needs to be a number, an email address, or some specific other perceived type. And after that, we have the pattern that specifies a regular expression that defines a pattern to a pattern the entered data needs to follow. We are going to see this better in the example. After this, we have that the case when all the information is valid and when the information is invalid. When it is valid, the element matches the valid CSS pseudo class, which lets you apply a specific style to the valid elements. If the user tries to send the data, the browser will submit the form provided with no problem. Now, when it is invalid, the element matches the invalid CSS to the class, which allows you to put styles on it. And if the user tries to send the data, the browser will block the form and display an error message, as we said before. This is what form validation is about. Let's see an example of this. Here in the built-in, we got our form. We got our file set. Then we got some inputs of type radio. We said that these inputs are required. Also, we got an input that is a numerical input, a number with a minimum of 12 and a maximum of 120 with the 1 by 1. Well, as you can see, this is not a required input, so we don't need to obligatorily fill it. After that, we got an input that is required. We got our parent. We got that this input text input might be filled with the word banana. It cares if we start with capitalized or not. So here, very important to know, we can fill it with banana. This vertical line here means that it is one or another of these options. For example, we got banana or cherry or apple or strawberry or lemon or orange. These words here are the possible options that we have. These are the patterns we have. Also, we got a data list that this will display a list that tells the user which are the possible options. And well, this is required, as we said before, field. After that, we got an email. In this case, this is not required. I might write an email here with the web page doesn't force me to do that, to fill it. And after that, I have a short message that is not required either. In the styles, we got some static CSS, and we got here the input invalid that we display as a box shadow when the value is invalid, and input focus invalid. Now when it's focused and it is invalid, we set the box shadow at none. Here is the example. For example, if I try to submit it without filling this, it says please select one of the options. Now without this, please fill out this field. Here I have the options banana, cherry, apple. If I write whatever I want, it says that it doesn't match the request format, so I need to follow this format. For example, I want an apple. Here these ones are not required, so I can submit it just like this. Now I want a banana, and I want to say that I am 2 years. No, I can't, because the value must be greater than or equal than 12. So if I use this, for example, now I get this and I can do it perfectly. And last example, say like this, and I want to write something, whatever, that is not an email address, please include, well, this is going to tell me that I need to include an mail address, and now I can do it perfectly. Well, perfect. That was the example of built-in validation. Now let's go with validating forms using JavaScript. Here we are going to use an inner API, the constraints validation API, that makes the following properties available on the next elements. We are going to have the validation method that returns a localized message describing the validation constraint. We'll validate that returns true if the element will be validated when the form is submitted, false otherwise, and well, we are going to work mostly with this. The validity that returns a validity state object that contains several properties describing the validity state of the element. We are going to find things like type mismatch that returns true if the value is not in the required syntax. Pattern mismatch returns true if the value does not match the specified pattern, and false if it does match. Too long or too short that returns if it is either case it doesn't match the minimum length or the maximum length. The valid, this returns if any constraint is not followed, it is going to return false. If all the constraints are followed, it means that it is valid, all the constraints were meets all its validation constraints, it's going to return true, and well, so on. Also, we have some methods like check validity that returns true if the element's value has no validity problems, false otherwise. Report validity that reports invalid fields using events, and we can set a custom validity message, sending a message, and it is going to be or display in the error. Let's see the example. Here we have a simple form, way simpler than this one, where we just specify that it is an email that is required, and we establish a minimum length. The CSS is pretty statical except for the input invalid and focus invalid that we already worked with it before. Also, we got with well, some specific for the classes. And now the new part, we are going to see the JavaScript. We find our form, our mail, and our mail with the span, this one that we had right here. And first we create our function show error, where with our email and with the object we said before, the validity, if our validity value has value missing, we said that we need to enter an email address because we are working with an email in this case. If type mismatch, so enter, please enter value needs to be an email address. We tell that we need an email, and email valid is too short. We said email should be at least this length characters, you enter this length, and as you can see, this is more personalized way to do these errors. Well, for example, now we add our listeners to our input. Here I have some console log to show you that using check valid method and the validity valid attribute is we can have the same result. We check if our input is valid, so there is no error message. We don't set any error. We reset the visual state of the message. And in the other case, if it is not valid, we use our show error function, and we add a listener to the submit. If it is valid, we just let submit the form, and in the other case, if it is not valid, we show our error and we use our event prevent default. Let's see this example. It is simple. We got it here. If I write whatever I want, and the wallet needs to be an email address. Let's refresh the web page and use the inspect. As you can see, if I try to submit anything, you need to enter an email. If I try, as you can see, sorry, the console, it is always false until I write a proper a proper mail. As you can see, both are false always at the same time, and both are true always at the same time, so you get the same result. Well, this was the example. Let's continue with the presentation, and we get to the summary and conclusion. Well, for concluding, client-side form validation sometimes requires JavaScript, but this is mostly if you want to customize styling and error messages, but it always requires you to think carefully about the user. Remember that this option is to improve the user experience, so think always about the user. And always remember to help your user correct the data they provide. Give good advices to the user to always correct the data in the best way and make it easier to understand for them. To end, be sure to display explicit error messages, be permissive about the input format, and point out exactly where the errors occurs. Well, thank you so much. This has been all. If any doubts, please make the comment. All the information source was from the webpage below. This is the link. I'm going to leave the link also in the description. Well, I hope you like it. See you.